going to go through the answer to question 6. So penicillins are antibiotics. Some bacteria produce an enzyme that breaks down one sort of penicillin. So in your mind, hopefully, you're thinking, well, antibiotics, that's a topic we covered in chapter 16, but also coming to the surface of your brain is all the work that we've done on enzymes as well. And at this stage in the course, you should be quite happy to mix some of Unit 1 into Unit 2 answers. So Part A is asking the gene that codes for this enzyme may be passed from one species of bacteria to another species. Describe how. There's 2 marks available, and so we need to say at least 2 things. So describe how this process happens. Well, how genes are passed from one bacteria to another species is a process called horizontal gene transmission. And how this is possible is because the bacteria grows a pilus and passes it on by conjugation is the term we've come across. So describe how it's possible. It is by conjugation. Okay, part B is telling us that there are different sorts of penicillin, and all of these have the same basic chemical structure shown in the diagram. If a bacterial infection cannot be treated with one sort of penicillin, it can be treated with a different sort. What you need to do is use your knowledge of enzyme action to explain why the different sort of penicillin is effective in treating the infection. So before we start this question, we need to use the information at the top of the question here, which is saying that some bacteria are resistant to penicillin because they produce an enzyme that breaks down one sort of penicillin. What this question is saying is that if we then use a different sort of penicillin, that enzyme will no longer be able to work on it because it won't recognise it. Okay, so when answering the question, you need to remember that there are 3 marks available. So for these 3 marks, you need to mention something about the shape, in this case of the penicillin, how that will affect the binding of the enzyme and substrate, and what actually will be the consequence of this in this particular example. So, because we're going to be treating the bacteria with a different sort of penicillin, this different penicillin will have a different shape. I'm limited to what I can write on here. So the different penicillin will have a different shape. And this means that the enzyme that's produced by the bacteria will no longer, so the enzyme will no longer bind to the active site. So effectively there will be no enzyme substrate complexes formed. So because there's no enzyme substrate complexes formed, there will actually be no product. The penicillin will not be broken down. So this different penicillin will will not be broken down by the enzyme, and so can actually be effective at doing its job of killing the bacterial infection. Part C of this question is again asking us to use information from Unit 1, in this case about pathogens and how they affect the body. So farmers often keep large numbers of cattle together, and farmers used to give cattle food which had antibiotics added to it. Part 1, suggest how adding antibiotics to the food of the cattle increased profit for the farmers. Well, by giving the cows antibiotics, you would be killing any of the harmful bacteria. So this will obviously mean disease is less likely. And that really is enough for 2 marks, but I think it's good to explain it full. Disease is less likely, so that means the cow hasn't got to concentrate on fighting off any pathogens. All of its energy can be put into making meat. So overall, the farmer, it has an increased yield, he produces more meat. which is what farmers like to do. So overall the farmer has an increased yield because more food is converted into meat. The last part is asking how adding antibiotics to the food of cattle is now banned in many countries. You need to use your knowledge of selection to explain why adding antibiotics was banned. So it's a good idea to use the word selection. So there's 2 marks available. So what we need to say is that we know that if we add antibiotics, then it gives any antibiotic resistant bacteria a selective advantage. So it gives any antibiotic resistant bacteria a selective advantage because it will kill off all of the non-resistant ones. So this means that they may well increase in number, so the frequency of those with antibiotic resistance will increase, and they may well spread resistance to other species by our horizontal transmission again. Horizontal transmission. So there's more than 2 marks there. I'm just trying to put all the information from our lessons into there.